Hey everybody, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. I am super excited for the show today. I've got a returning guest. She's actually my partner every week on the live show that I do called Boy Meets Squirrel. And she was the very first guest on this podcast way back when. We originally intended to do this as an anniversary show. We're a tad bit late, but we're here and ready to get going. So let me bring my good friend, my partner in crime and many other things, co-author to be, Lindsay. Hey, Lindsay, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Dan.
Well, that didn't sound very enthusiastic.
I'm doing great, Dan. Is that better?
There we go. That's better. A little bit better. So, lots to talk about. So, as I said when we first came on, you were the very first guest, and we kind of talked in general about the state of affairs between men and women. I don't know if you remember it, but we kind of want to revisit that because things have changed in the past 12 to 14 months or so. We talk about it often on our live show, but I thought it would be fun to really delve into it and not have to worry about getting shut down, which seems to happen to us every week.
I have to worry about censoring myself so that I don't get in trouble.
Yeah,
at
least on TikTok we get censored, not so much on the other platforms. So before we jump into that, Linz, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about you, why you do what you do, and all that good stuff.
All right. Anyone who's seen me at all or hasn't, my name is Lindsay, aka Squirrely Girl 1988. The whole year has to be in there. I have been an advocate for men and boys, particularly. I got my start with male sexual assault victims, and then that's snowballed into DV and a whole bunch of other stuff, including family court, just general double standards. But I've been doing this for 18 years, since I myself was drugged and raped at 16. And I'm not a professional. I don't do it for a living. I do, however, volunteer my time to do peer counseling for guys who need it. And when TikTok kind of exploded, I decided that I couldn't just sit there and lurk in the comments and just let women say things that I know to be untrue and to just bash men. And evil prevails when good men do nothing. So I turned my camera on, and I haven't looked back since.
And you've done amazing work. And I don't say that just because you're my partner in crime, but you have done a lot to raise awareness on various issues men and boys face. And honestly, even though you catch a lot of grief for it from various sources, the truth of the matter is you're not really bashing anyone. You are trying to raise awareness. You are holding people accountable. I think that's fair to say. What's a pup's name since he's showing himself?
This is Sansa.
Sansa, as in Game of Thrones?
Sansa Stark. First of her name, Queen of the North. That is on her vet paperwork. That's her official name.
Well, she is a cutie pie, and she's welcome on the show as much as she would like to be. So, but let's kind of jump into various things. So when we first talked a little over a year and a quarter ago, there was a lot going on, but things have really changed. And even in the last couple of weeks, last month.
Oh, they've snowballed.
Woo, baby. So I thought let's just start there. So there's a few topics we could talk about, but the big one raging across the internet as we're filming this is the whole, there it is, man versus bear thing. And I thought it would be fun to have you on the show to kind of give a female perspective that isn't being talked about, right? We're hearing all the other side, why bears are better than men. But we're not hearing too much, not that they're not trying, because there are women out there trying to say, hey, no, but they're getting shouted down and attacked viciously. I happened to watch a video this morning, younger woman, I would say early 20s, saying, no, I'm going to choose the man. And then the comments on her video, oh my God, I was like, wow, from other women and a few white knights, I might add. But what's your take on the whole man versus bear? Why don't we share that with the audience first?
First off, it is an absolutely ridiculous question. It's a false equivalency to start off with so many logical holes and fallacies. It's absolutely pointless. It's framed as a way to try and get men to see from women's perspective why we have this fear. Like, this is our perspective, understand what we're doing. But if that is the goal, which I believe it was a shit way to try and accomplish that. So I see one of two things happening, and I've made a couple videos on this that aren't doing as well as my other video, but I've gotten a lot of feedback on those two specifically. Good feedback, not just, be gone Satan, which is what I usually get. And the two things is one, it's actually a question of perception. So women's perception of danger versus the actual reality of danger. Women have a perception that all men are out to get them for a variety of reasons, versus the reality that no, most men are not out to get you. Most men are not Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. There's not a rapist lurking behind, every aisle in the 7-Eleven. But that's the perception. And the reason that perception exists is point number two. You have a whole bunch of women who have never been victimized, who are appropriating the trauma of actual victims in order to justify their own hatred, bigotry, and misandry. And because they're using those small percentages of women that have actually been victimized, and yes, I know they say, oh, I've every woman I've ever met. But then when you actually ask them, well, what do you count as being victimized? Oh, I was made to feel uncomfortable. That's not being victimized. How you feel does not equal actual victimization. Because lots of times I feel uncomfortable in a room with average people because I'm antisocial as hell. But that doesn't mean that everyone in that room is victimizing me. That's my insecurity, not everyone else's. So then when you look at the actual numbers, it's only 1 in 6 women. And they have used this. They're not using actual, like, all violent crimes. The two violent crimes that they're talking about are either sexual assault or rape. So if you actually look at the numbers, it's 1 in 6. That's still 1 in 6 too many, but it's not the, what, 1/3 of all women that everyone likes to claim.
Oh, I've heard recently they're even throwing out it's 100% with absolutely no support behind that. But now, tell a lie often enough becomes the truth. And it begs the question, and I know we've talked about it, but it's a good opportunity to talk about it again. You talk about they're generating fear here, right?
Yes.
That's the goal behind it. And I know I've asked you this before, but let's revisit it. To what end, right? If you're going to make women so terrified of men, depending on who you talk to, the number of encounters that you have with the opposite sex on a given day is somewhere between 200-300 and 1,000. I've heard both ends of that. For the sake of argument, let's just put it at 300 on the lower end. So you have 300 encounters. An encounter means that you're in the same room with them. You're walking down the street, they pass you by, you talk to them, all of that. Using that number and knowing the reality is those 300, probably 0 on an average day are going to pose any threat to you. Now multiply that out times a week, a month, a year, your life, right? But yet they want women to fear every single one of those 300 encounters. And if you get them in that place, why should they ever leave their house? Why would they ever leave their house?
So the interesting thing about the 1 in 6 is it's over a woman's lifetime. So average woman lives to be what, 70, 76 or 78?
70, yeah, it's in that area.
So 1 in 6 over that span of time is a drop in the bucket of all things. They just use that 1 in 6 to kind of generate, again, we're generating fear. And what it is they need to legitimize the bigotry, the hatred that so many modern women have towards men in order to continue to justify the need for feminism, which, as I said in the video that I talked about all this in on my TikTok channel, is should have gone, the feminist movement was necessary at one time. It is not necessary anymore. And in my opinion, it should have gone the way of the dodo or the dinosaurs 2 decades ago. It should have just faded out. It accomplished its goal. There's not a single right today that men have that I don't. There are, however, plenty of rights that I have that men don't. The right to
can you give a couple examples on that?
Innocent until proven guilty. The right of due process. Men don't have it. If you accuse a man of something, he is guilty until he is proven innocent. Not necessarily in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion. And even then, with the way that social media works now, you can't get an unbiased jury because those jury members will have heard something, especially for the high profile cases, before they even get into the jury room. So they're not coming to you with this clean slate. And not only are they not coming to you with a clean slate about that particular trial, they're also coming with all of their prejudice already built in because of the society we live in. So men are not guaranteed right to a jury of their peers or the right to be innocent until proven guilty. They are presumed guilty and then they have to prove themselves innocent. And even if they are given the clean slate by the jury, meaning the court finds them not necessarily not guilty, but not enough to say that without a doubt they are guilty, their life is still ruined.
Right.
So even though they were declared guilty, the people around them, for all intents and purposes, it has become like the Salem witch trials. If you're accused, you're guilty for the rest of your life. There are people who will still say, even with overwhelming evidence, oh, he did it. He did it. We all know he did it. Because if he didn't do it, why would they accuse him?
Yeah. And if you ever want to hear some of those stories, I've done shows probably at this point, half dozen or more with men who were falsely accused of heinous crimes of all types, ultimately proving beyond a doubt innocent, in some cases with video evidence proving they weren't even around at the time, yet their lives have been ruined and continue to be ruined, even though they were completely exonerated. And it destroys a man for life. But yet, to your point, there is a presumption of guilt. I've had actual law enforcement officers on here that have admitted that's the case, right? That they're told it has to be that way. Assume he's guilty until you prove him innocent. And again, that doesn't work in reverse. In fact, quite the opposite. Even when you prove sometimes a woman has committed a heinous act, she gets off scot-free. And one recently who admitted, forget going to trial and having a jury find her guilty, she admitted she SA'd a younger child and she got probation for it. How can that be? You know? It's scary, you know. And another one that I throw out all the time is women have the right to vote. Men do not. Men have the opportunity to vote if they sign up for selective service. So it is not
that's the other
freely given right.
That's bodily autonomy. See, and I always ask when women always throw up our rights are being taken away. I'm like, okay, without invoking abortion, because that is a privilege, not a right.
Mm-hmm.
And they always inevitably get mad at me for that. They're like, what do you mean? It's a right to your body. No, only the Sith deal in absolutes, and bodily autonomy is not an absolute. If you could literally get away with doing whatever you want with your body, that means that you could walk into a building and scream fire. And as a result of everything that happened, the chaos, the stampede, all of it, you would not be in trouble. That's not true. The law says that's not true. The law would also have to be changed that rape and murder would have to be legal, because what I choose to do with my body, even if that is ending your life or trespassing on you, you can't get mad at me for. So bodily autonomy is not the absolute power that women like to claim it is. Men don't have it, and we have far more bodily autonomy than men do. We do.
Absolutely.
Reproductive rights is a perfect example. We hold all the power. I've said it before, I said it again, and I probably die saying this. Parenthood has become a condition predicated upon the will of the mother. If the mother wants the child, but the father doesn't, too bad. If the father wants the child, but the mother doesn't, too bad. A woman can even make a child the financial father without him actually doing the deed. And that's not fair. So to sit there and say that, oh, we're losing our rights. No, what we are occasionally doing is losing our privileges. See, privilege is invisible to those who have it, and to those who have had it for too long, for those who have had it too long, equality feels like oppression. So when you actually treat women like equal to men, they don't like it. They're like, you're oppressing me. No, we're not. We're treating you like equals, and you don't like it.
But it goes back to, even that, right? So they've created that divisiveness between men and women on things like rights. We were talking about man versus bear and all that stuff. It's all done to create animosity, fear. How does that benefit women, though? I mean, you are a woman. I know you don't feel this way, but put yourself in their shoes if you can, and just kind of answer the question as if you were a feminist. I know I'm putting you on the spot here. I can see you salivating. But
Get the mouth.
How does it benefit an average woman? Let's say a young girl of, I don't know, what's an impressionable? Let's say 18, right? For an older woman, especially, say your age, right? Mid-30s, to go to an 18-year-old woman and say, no. Every man is a risk to you. You need to fear them. They are going to, quote unquote, get you, whatever way you want to phrase it. To the goal being to make that 18-year-old woman so scared. How does that benefit her?
It doesn't. And I know that you don't like to do politics, but I think it trips on that fine line of politics, is because as long as we're fighting each other, we're not paying any attention to the man behind the curtain. And the powerful want us to fight each other because the one thing they fear most is a united front. I mean, our country was founded on what people can do when they join together, put aside their differences. And I mean, we took out the British Army, which hadn't been done before, with basically guerrilla warfare. Farmers with pitchforks took out the most powerful empire at the time. So they know what we're capable of, and that's what the people in power fear. As long as we're fighting each other, bickering back and forth, it is not for the benefit of the people that are doing the fighting. It is of the benefit of the people who are making us fight, because it's divide and conquer. It's the oldest trick in the book. It's like the jar with ant theory. If you put a whole bunch of black ants and red ants together in a jar, they won't hurt each other. They'll live harmoniously. But if you shake the jar, they'll start attacking each other, assuming the other is the enemy, when the real enemy is the person who shook the jar. So the real people who are benefiting from this division are the people who keep shaking the jar.
But again, where are the leaders of the women's side, even the women's movement, if you will, the feminism movement? Why are they going in on this, right? Why wouldn't they want? Because to me, this harms women far more than helps them. I mean, legitimately harms them to put that much fear, because there are cases where women will not leave their houses, or they walk down the street and they're literally shaking because, a guy like me, 6'1", 200 plus, well over 200 plus pounds, walks by them. And, I see it all the time. I walk down my local downtown. People part in front of me, right? I apparently have a cop walk. I didn't know that until someone mentioned it to me. But people will part. I've walked down the streets of New York City and literally people part in front of me. I'm not doing anything. I'm just me walking on. I don't even notice these people. But how does that benefit a woman to make her so scared that way? If it were me, and this is where I want your opinion, I would be fighting that tooth and nail, because I don't want that type of division, because it doesn't help a woman.
So I've touched on this a bit of when I went after our friend. Can I say his name on here? We're not on TikTok.
I would just keep it cool.
Mr. Clippy 2.0. The male feminists who sit there and tell these things to women. I've said this. I said, if you were really an ally, you would look us in the eye and you would tell us the truth. You wouldn't stroke our egos. You wouldn't, coddle us by telling us, what we want to hear. What they're doing instead is they're feeding us a comforting lie to make us feel better, because the truth would hurt our feelings. The truth would force us to actually grow and evolve. And that's uncomfortable, because growing and evolving is uncomfortable. A lot of growing pains exist for a reason. So they would rather keep us comfortable and lie to us than tell us what we need to hear in order to make ourselves better. And I fight that tooth and nail. But I honestly, truly think that some people think they're helping. They think, oh, we need to make women aware of this. We need to make them know that they need to, look over their shoulder. And they think they're helping. And that's the sad part.
Mm-hmm.
The truly sad part is they think they're helping. And then when you challenge that belief, they get angry. And all I can think of is because I collect quotes, is, it's easier to convince someone. It is easier to fool someone than to convince them they have been fooled. They've bought that lie hook, line, and sinker, and they've wrapped their entire identity around it. And then if you challenge that, they have a crisis of self, and they don't like it. But you're right. It doesn't help women. It's the whole thing with the damn bear question is it's justifying women's fear, an irrational fear, by the way. It's almost a phobia at this point, a man phobia or a male phobia.
Yeah.
Because it's such an irrational fear. Now, I understand that the fear is real, because just because you have an irrational fear doesn't mean that it's not a real fear, because that's why it's an irrational fear. You shouldn't be afraid, but you are. I have an irrational fear of heights. Despite never having fallen, never having, broken anything, I'm deathly afraid of heights. And I know that, and I recognize it, so I can counteract that with logic, like walking up to, the 18th or 20th something floor of something, going, I'm not going to fall. The building's not going to collapse, even though my legs are shaking as I go up the stairs. But logic prevails. But so many other people, they don't understand that it is an irrational fear. And then, of course, like I said, the people who are appropriating the trauma of real victims to make it seem like everyone is a victim has only fed into that fear to justify why they have it. My fear is justified. It's a real fear because all these other women have these experiences too, when in reality, probably only maybe one or two other women have an experience. Everyone else is just borrowing the experience of other people to try and augment it and make it seem like it's more than it really is.
And I would argue that it, for someone that has actually suffered a trauma like that, it makes it more difficult for them in a few ways. One, when you have all these people out there claiming trauma that they didn't have, it negates the trauma of the actual victims, right? I think. And then the other side of it is it becomes overwhelming to hear for the average person. So they tune it out. So then when victims try and come forward, they get ignored. There's too much noise. So I'm just going to tune it out. And then a legitimate victim comes along and then they don't get heard. And I know you've talked about that a little bit in regards to that, where in regards to false allegations, there's so many of them right now going on that true victims, and they are out there. We're not trying to say they're not, but they're just not getting heard because police, law enforcement in general, they're off chasing all these false allegations. Share some thoughts on that.
So I'm sure everyone who has a phone has, at least in the US, has the stupid Amber Alert fire sirens that go off, the Amber Alerts that go out to everyone with a cell phone. I'll be, in the grocery store and everyone will go off at the same time. And because they go off so frequently for the whole state, or at least in my state, Texas, the whole state, so not even nearby, because someone in San Antonio does not need to get an Amber Alert for El Paso. There's nothing we can do. They're 800 miles away. But because they go off so often for the whole state, everyone ignores them. They're like, yeah, click. They don't even read it. It's just like, stop it, just turn it off, which defeats the purpose. And that's what I see happening. So many people are going, rape, sexual assault, this, that, I was hurt, blah, blah. That it's too noisy. And the people that actually are hurt don't get heard over the, cornucopia of noise.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they do get hurt, or finally if they scream loud enough, they always get told, "Are you sure?" And it's not because of a lack of empathy. It's because the empathy has been tested too much. Empathy is not necessarily a finite amount, but it can't refill. It's like a well. It can go down, and then the water level rises, or an aquifer, go down, the water level rises. And if your empathy is constantly tested by people who are lying about it, eventually you're going to get skeptical. It's not to say they'll never be believed, but the first instance isn't to jump to, "Oh my God, I'm so hurt. What can we do?" It'll be like, "I've done this before. Are you sure?"
And I think what happens too with that case is those victims, they're sitting there, they're trying to share their story, they're not being heard. It just exacerbates their trauma. And having heard from the other side where you get the false allegations, and because there's so many of them now, they're building on each other, right? Well, it's now in a matter of speaking, and I hate to put it this way, but I honestly believe we're getting to this point. It's almost cool now to make a false allegation, right? It gives you street cred in the feminist realm, so to speak. And that's scary.
Being a victim of men in general gives you power, street cred. In the feminist world, that it has become a game of the victimhood Olympics, the oppression Olympics. Who has been victimized more? And yes, I know women who have claimed it just so they can show solidarity with the Me Too movement. And then when I ask them, "Well, what was yours like?" Because as another survivor, I'm not questioning you, I'm not doubting you. I want to know what your experience was, because everyone's experience is different. And they'll give me some bullshit about how they were at a party and some guy accidentally, grabbed their butt, or even on purpose. But that's not the same as being drugged, held down, and raped, or not drugged and violently held down and beaten and then raped. I mean, I agree that was something uncomfortable that shouldn't have happened to you, but it is not on the same level of terrible that a lot of other, what I say, real victims are.
Right.
And we need to also kind of be cautious of what we consider being a victim. Being a victim is usually you had something truly traumatic happen to you. Is someone grabbing your ass at a party, especially if everyone's been drinking, truly traumatic? No. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Definitely yes. But like traumatizing? No. Not in the same way that being violently beaten and raped, or being violently drugged and raped, or waking up and having someone on top of you is. That's not even in the same ballpark. But you have women sitting there going, "Well, he catcalled me." And
and then they suck up those services that are available for victims, right?
Yes,
So
they do.
there's a perfect example. He catcalled me, or he looked at me funny at the gym, or whatever. And okay, well, we got to give you counseling and all that. Meanwhile, an actual victim sitting over here can't get anything, can't get any services,
because all the resources are being
there
to non-victims or victim-like.
Yeah. And
in many cases, they're only victims in their head. They think, "I was traumatized. It was traumatic for me." Okay, well, your version of trauma and my version of trauma are two different things, and you have to. Sansa wants to be so badly in the video.
She's the star of the show right now.
They want so badly to be a victim, which I don't understand that, because as an actual victim, this is not a club anyone should want to join.
Lindsay, that's a great point, right? Because I am also a victim. I've talked about it on the show many times. I don't dwell on my victimhood. I talk about it in the sense of I'm going to educate people and try and help people heal. And my main thing is to make people understand that these things happen to men too. But I don't sit there and dwell on it. I'm not trying to get out there and get street cred or sympathy or clicks and likes by saying it. And that's the difference between them. It's funny. This morning I was engaged with I'll say a lovely young woman who's trying to argue with me about how exhausting it is to be a stay-at-home mom and have to do the dishes and laundry. I see you rolling your eyes. And I'm like, well, I was that for a couple of years. It was the easiest job of my life. And, I countered everything she said, but all she kept doing was falling back into victimhood, right? It's different. How is doing dishes any different for a man than a woman? Or how is taking stuff from a basket and putting it in laundry? And you'll love this one. Her ultimate one was, well, I pre-treat my clothes. And I'm like, it takes you 4 hours a day to pre-treat your clothes? And I'm sitting there going,
iron mine, that takes longer than all of it put together. So
I'm like, but the reality, I mean, I don't mean, well, I do mean to make fun of her a little bit, but the reality of it though is, in her case, she's so enamored of dwelling in that victimhood that it's just consuming her life. And it's obvious that it is, right? And how can anyone, male, female, Bajoran, Klingon, I don't care, how can they ever find happiness in their life if they're wallowing in victimhood? I just don't get it.
I don't think they can. I think that the people who are pushing that you need to be a victim, it's back to the misery loves company. Yeah. They want to validate their life choices, and they want to legitimize the fact that, it's not my fault. Because if you're a perpetual victim, then nothing is ever your fault. Everything is always the fault of whatever made you the victim in the first place. It's like the people who have XYZ insert mental illness here. I'm autistic, therefore you can't blame me for being a bitch. Yes, the fuck I can. Mm-hmm. And or you having a scatterbrain doesn't, you having XYZ mental illness does not give you carte blanche freedom to be an asshole to everybody. Like, you don't get a get out of jail free card. And that's a lot of what I see happening here, is that they are so enamored with, like you said, their own victimhood. And because of it, nothing is ever their fault. They don't have to self-examine. They don't have to grow, get better, heal, none of it. And they don't have to accept any of the responsibility. And as you and I are fond of saying, accountability is kryptonite to the modern female. And that's what I see driving a lot of it, is that nobody wants to accept that they might be part of the problem. Maybe not all of the problem, but part of the problem. And I think it's one of the things we've gotten too damn comfortable. Our lives are so damn easy that we're making mountains out of molehills in order to try and feel, like we are struggling like our ancestors. And I'm like, I'm sorry. But unless you have to walk 3 miles to a well or the river for any water, you can't even compare. And, but like to kind of segue into the household thing, which I get hammered for that all the time. I have been called every name in the book because I'm a stay-at-home traditional wife. I prefer traditional homemaker to trad wife, because that has some really negative religious connotations, and a sexual component that I really don't understand, like submissive crap.
Yeah, I don't get that one either. But let's call it what it is. You're a pick-me.
Better a pick-me than a skip-me.
There you go. I was giving you the chance to go there. But yeah, I mean, let's segue into that, because that's a great point, is that, again, this is where women are hurting women, in my estimation, and you run into this all the time, but we see it all the time, where there's that group that, they're career focused. That's awesome. More power to them for being that way. They've made a choice in their life that they absolutely had the right to make that choice and pursue their dream that way. But yet they're the ones that are most condescending, demeaning, and will do anything and everything, say anything and everything to someone like yourself, who's made another career choice. To stay-at-home parent is a career. Again, how does that help womanhood? This is what blows my mind, is they think it's beneficial.
Even from my standpoint as a woman, I don't understand the benefit And I will ask other women, where's the benefit in this? Oh, well, I'm raising awareness of what? A fallacy? You might as well be a raise awareness to the fact that the grass is purple. It's not true. The thing you're fighting, it's to borrow a literary phrase. I've used this before, but you're making monsters out of windmills. You're fighting non-existent monsters in order to what? Feel brave? There are plenty of real monsters that you could be fighting, but instead you made one up that you know you can easily defeat. It's like a straw man fallacy. You raise up the effigy that you made, burn it, and then say, yes, I won. Yay me. And it's like, no, you didn't. Bad you. Like, I defeated this threat that was never really a threat in the first place, or I defeated this, societal roadblock that isn't a societal roadblock to begin with. And then you have the audacity to sit there and preach about female choice while ridiculing any woman who doesn't choose the same things you do, which makes you a hypocrite of the worst kind.
Yeah, I mean, it's mind-blowing to me because I've seen the comments you've dealt with. I see women out there and the comments that they get directed at them because they've made a choice to be a stay-at-home mom, be a wife, be in a happy, healthy relationship, all of that. And I throw out this for discussion is I think they're trying to justify them being able to claim I'm strong and independent because I have a career, but therefore someone like you, Lindsay, cannot be strong and independent because, you're home and you have a husband that, brings home the groceries, so to speak. And to me, it's just blows my mind because, and I'm not saying this because, she's my friend or anything like that, but Lindsay is a strong, independent woman. I say that. I know damn well her husband would say that, and a lot of other people would say it. But yet, the ones that aren't strong and independent, that are insecure, are labeling you. I jokingly call you a pick-me because of it. And again, to what end? Does that make someone strong and independent?
I think it's just the general bully mentality of, I feel small, so I want to make someone else feel smaller so that I don't feel quite as small. And on me, it doesn't work because I wear pick me with pride. I'm currently designing a shirt that's going to say the original pick me. I already have one that says pick me for father's rights. I mean, if they're going to call me that, I'm going to flip it.
It's a badge of honor to me. I mean,
because they're saying, I hope man picks you. And I responded to a comment earlier today, and oh boy, did I make her mad. I got 3 videos out of it on someone else's page because she insulted him. And I said, typical, you can't argue his point, so you insult him. And she goes, has he picked you yet? And I go, this particular creator? No, but my husband did 20 years ago. We've been married 16 years. We met in marching band and I adore him. Thanks for asking, sweetie. Love you. Bye. And then she was like, it's like, because what they're looking for is they're looking to make you mad. And my dad told me this when I was a kid, and I will forever always remember it. That's what bullies do. They want to make you angry. They want a reaction. It validates something in them, and that's what they're looking for. So the best way you can get them, so to speak, is to not give it to them or to give them the opposite kind of reaction that they're looking for. Like when they call me pick me, they want me to deny it. They don't expect me to embrace it and say, oh yes, I love my husband, or any of the things that I do, because I speak sarcasm fluently. They're not expecting that. They're expecting a denial, not an acceptance, and they don't know what to do with that. They're like, what?
Yeah.
And it's hilarious, but and I know you're not supposed to feed the trolls, but every now and then I like.
Oh, it's fun.
I like to play with my food, like a bear.
There you go.
Play with their food.
That was good. Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny you mentioned that because, on this very channel that people are watching this on, I've been playing here and there with the trolls recently. And again, my goal, and I know yours is as well, is we're never going to change them or their minds on anything, but we can help educate others by doing that. But again, it's just hilarious to me how they think it makes them strong to be a bully. when in reality, it makes them weak. And it's that mindset that I think is being handed down from generation to generation on the female side. And I think on the male side, we're the opposite. You start doing stuff like that, we're going to call your ass out, right? You try and bully another man, and you got to be careful, because just because he might be physically smaller than you, he may take you out, right? I know Navy SEALs that I dwarf. Who do you think's going to win in a fight? Come on, right? I mean, I'm not that stupid to try and bully, and let's say, a Navy SEAL. And I understand that's an extreme position. But yet the other side of it is women seem to be encouraging each other these days to be bullies. And it's backfiring because men are clearly rejecting them.
I think it comes down to women are trying to emulate men because they think that's what it takes to be strong and independent.
Yeah, that's my point.
And which is ironic, because a movement that's supposed to champion women rejects any and all femininity. The idea of being the only way you can be a strong, independent woman in today's society is to espouse masculine traits and to act out those masculine traits. And if you have any femininity at all, which there is a quiet strength in femininity that flies completely under the radar. It's like an endurance. In an endurance race, you can sprint and you will tire yourself out quickly, versus slow and steady wins the race. And that's what femininity, the quiet strength of femininity is. So it's like, that's great, hun. You can burn yourself a candle at both ends and burn yourself out in 10 years. Me, on the other hand, I will outlast you every time. And they think that bullying smaller people is how men get their hierarchy. That's not how men get their hierarchy, but that's the female interpretation of it, a misinterpretation from where I'm sitting. And we're trying to emulate that misinterpretation, all while guys are trying to helpfully say, no, that's not how we do it. That's really not how you do it. And the women are sitting there, no, shut up. Yes, it is. Guys do this. No, we don't. Yes, you do. And it's just, it boggles the mind, because they're trying to emulate men, but they're not trying to emulate actual men. They're trying to emulate their idea of men, like a fantasy of what they think men do. It's like the stupid women who get mad at their husbands because their husband cheated on them in a dream. And I've seen that one.
I've lived that.
I wish that was satire. It's not.
I have lived that one, Lindsay. Okay. And I'm like,
that's your subconscious. Your subconscious came up with that, not him.
Yeah.
You can't punish him for something your subconscious came up with. And then when you sit there and try and tell them gently I try and talk to people with compassion, women, hey, this isn't helpful. I will, however, match their energy if they come at me wrong or sideways, because a lot of the times they're banking on the fact that no one has ever actually stood up to them before. They've always been able to yell, scream like Karens, yell, scream, and get their way, because people would rather back down than deal with it. And because they'd rather back down than deal with it, they have a false sense of superiority or a false sense of confidence. And I'm that one person that will stand in their way, the pebble in their shoe, and go, you're not nearly as strong as you think you are, ma'am.
Well, it tends to backfire on them too, right? And then they'll come at me, and then I never get mad, as you know, and I know what you do the same way. We start laughing about it, right? They're coming at you, and they think we're enraged, like, we're ready to explode, and we're literally laughing at them. And ultimately they end up looking like fools. And then when that happens, then it's, you hate all women, or you're a misogynist. That's their only fallback. But this kind of leads to something you kind of brought up already, and I wanted to have this discussion with you, which is that mindset that women have, that they think they know better than men what men think, feel, all of that stuff. Because I get lectured all the time, and I know you've seen it, on how I don't know how men think. These women know better than me because some other woman told them. And I sit there and I go, you got to be kidding me, right? But I know you've seen that too, and you kind of touched on it. What?
So I actually had this conversation with a commenter, and I kind of got petty towards the end because I said, you spelled your name wrong. Her name is Lindsay as well, but she spelled it this wonky way. And I then proceeded to give her an etymology lesson in the history of her first name, which she didn't like because she was attacking me personally, which I usually don't go through. It was like, you know what? You've left me 200 comments. I counted 200 comments. She wrote me a novella, a love letter to how much she loathes me. I thought the least I could do was, honor her just a little bit.
Show her acknowledge it, right? It's only fair.
Acknowledge it and show her a little bit of the attention she does so desperately wants. So rather than be a hypocrite and attack her personally, all I said was, you're spelling your name wrong. Because she was very dismissive, and so I was like, well, how am I supposed to take you seriously from someone who doesn't even know how to spell your name right? And she's like, wait, what? I go, Lindsay, it's spelled Lindsay. That's the traditional Scottish spelling, unless you're English. Are you English? And she goes, I don't know. I was like, you might want to figure that out. She goes, how would you know? Because it's my name too. But she started off with telling me that I don't, this is what men think because other women have told me to. It was like, okay, well, I know for a fact this is not what men think because I've actually asked men. How many men have you actually talked to? Well, my so-and-so told me. Are they male? No. Well, then, that'd be like asking someone from Maine who has never left Maine about, I don't know, the best places to eat in France, rather than a French person, while the French person is standing right next to you saying, right, these are the places you want to go. And they're like, no, shut up. You don't understand. I'm going to ask this food blogger who's never actually left or been in France. And if that happens, people usually go, yeah, no, like they can tell that's wrong. But for some reason, when women are saying, this is what men think, this is what men want, is that really what men think and men want? Or is that your perception of what men think and men want based on, I have no idea? Well, in the movies written by women, catered to women who toe the feminist line, those movies, art reflects life, true, or art imitates life, true, but not to that degree. If that's what you're basing it on because someone else told you, I suggest you go out and talk to a man and ask him. I don't need to talk to a man because these ones on the internet, these 5 ones on the internet's not real. Go outside, touch grass, drink water.
Well, I mean, your point is it's completely valid there because even on the internet, though, I would say we as men, when I put a video up and I point out that, because this is what I frequently do, as you know, I point out the double standards that women have. And I give the male perspective on it. I call them my give and take videos, right? And they'll say a thing, and I'm like, no, this is what we think. Inevitably, I get hundreds of comments. You're wrong. You're telling me my feelings are wrong. Yes. And they double down. And then they turn around and say, you don't respect my feelings. Exactly. Why aren't you listening to me?
They expect you to validate and respect their feelings when they're not willing to do the same for you.
And I'll give you the perfect example of it. Man versus bear, right? They're going apoplectic right now because men are having fun, making satirical videos and all that. It started with the drizzle and all that. But with the man versus bear, I've actually seen videos from women going, well, we're trying to open up a conversation. We want to have a talk about it. And I'm like, okay, well, then you're going to have to let the men speak and hear what they say. No, we don't. We just want them to sit there and shut up and take it. Okay. Hey fans, I just wanted to take a quick break from the show to remind you just how much we here at Men Need to Be Heard truly appreciate and value your support. And we'd like to ask you to do us a little favor. Could you take a moment and give us that like and share this video with your friends? And hey, don't forget to give us a comment and let us know how we're doing. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us to continue bringing great guests and even more content each and every week. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. It's the best way to stay up to date with all of our latest discussions, interviews, and deep dives, as well as it helps the channel to grow so that we can continue to raise even more awareness on the issues men and boys face in today's modern society. So hit that subscribe button and become part of the Men Need to Be Heard community. All right, that's it for now. Back to the show.
They know that's what she wants to hear. They don't actually choose bear because anyone in their right mind with any modicum of intelligence wouldn't choose the bear. They're only saying what the woman wants to hear so that they can avoid a fight, which is unfortunate. But I've asked people, I was like, why do you, I had someone ask respectfully say, I'm with women, I choose the bear. And I said, respectfully, why? And they're like, well, why aren't you choosing the bear? Because I can math. I can't math very well, but I can math a little bit, and I'm not a bigot. I'm not a sexist bigot. And I got in my big fight with Mr. Clippy 2.0 because women are giving their experience. That's why I choose the bear. My experience. That's why I choose the bear. And I go, okay, if you want to choose the bear based on your experience, that's valid. What's not valid is using your experience to demand every other woman must also choose the bear.
That's a good point, right? But the other side of it too is, and I've made this argument. Every reason they have for choosing the bear, every argument they make works the other way around too, right? Well, because as you know, one was claiming, well, 2,000 women were killed by men in 2020, and there were only 4 deaths due to bears. And I went and looked it up, and it was somewhere around 1,100 men were killed by women, which we know is a lower number than actuality because they don't get reported. So by their logic, if you're going to say that it's riskier to be around a man versus a bear because of 2,000 women were killed, well, the same logic applies the other way around. Yet, no, we're not going to have to. Forget even acknowledging it. They won't even allow the conversation on it, right? Because that video got immediately reported. And I'm like, how does that, again, it goes back to how does that help you? But it's, and then you see the white knights like Clippy 2 or Clippy wannabe, as I call them. They're out there. I'm going to be honest with you. Some of them are doing it because of what you said, out of fear. I also think some of them, to be blunt, and I think a lot of women are doing this, to get clicks and likes. They can make money on the internet by doing that.
Yeah, I always get accused of being a pick-me because I'm, by definition, pick-me is looking for male validation, and I usually, if I think I can get away with it, if I know I'm not going to change their mind, I will say better a pick-me than a skip-me. I'll just embrace it. If I think the person I'm talking to has a chance of actually being able to either they themselves, or whoever's coming in behind us, I will sit there and say, calling another woman a pick-me is inherently misogynistic because you have denied my agency to believe as I wish based on my own cognitive ability, and you have reduced my sole motivation to that of external male validation. Like, if I really was looking for external male validation, I'd have an OnlyFans. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing this. And the guys out there that are doing it are the ones who ironically might be the ones who are sitting there saying, oh, women, I understand why women would choose the bear. They should choose the bear, are ironically the reason why some women should choose the bear. They are the predators. They're the wolves in sheep clothing, because in Mr. Clippy's case, Mr. Clippy 2.0's case, I actually got him to admit he just hates men. He thinks all men are evil. I go, except you, right? He goes, well, I'm good. And I'm like, that statement right there has more red flags than the Chinese Communist Party. You just outed yourself
Not to mention the fact that I've had 2 of his followers from prior accounts, because he's on his 7th or 8th account,
Yeah.
reach out to me behind the scenes and give me some information that I'm not quite ready to go public with, but will validate everything you just said. Just gonna leave it there.
That does not surprise me at all,
Yeah.
because and I mentioned this in like I think he's on video 8 by now. He's just been gold mining all of my comments and making video responses to them, which is fine. He's helping my algorithm, and I've gotten like,
Yeah, I know.
I've gotten like 1,000 new followers out of it. So, whatever. But in the fact that I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about him validating you as a person or something like that.
No, being a predator.
Predator. Oh, okay. Totally different tech.
It's like, if you really cared about us, you'd be telling us, all of this stuff. But instead, you'd coddle us, and you are the threat. In any party, because it takes 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
In any situation, it takes 2. You can't have an altercation or a relationship or any of that without 2 people, regardless of how much input. Now, if that input is, it could be very one-sided, in which case it's, 90% one person and 10% the other, but it still takes 2. Any person who is unwilling to share the blame and is instead pushing all of the blame for something off to one party or the other, while absolving completely the other side, is not your friend. They're not doing it to help you. And I said that to him, I forget in what comment, and I had actually I'm thinking she's a feminist. I'm not sure, but based on her picture, she looks like Lynn, but with many piercings.
Could be. You never want to generalize.
I never want to assume. So I didn't
assume, but
statistics show, anyway, probability, but whatever. She said, I'd never thought of it that way. And then she DM'd me, and we had a nice long chat.
Yeah, and I think I even messaged you behind the scenes on that. I had a very similar scenario about a week ago, right? Regarding man versus bear, and I had made out the points, then I should fear you every bit as much. Right. And I gave her salient points, and to her credit, and she was a feminist, her words, not mine. Right. And yes, she fit the stereotype with the multicolored hair and all that. I set that aside. She admitted it. I could tell I was hitting home with her, right? And it was actually a really good discussion. Problem is, she won't take it back to her fellow feminists and go, guys are having a legitimate argument here, right? It's going back to the man versus bear. The women want us to hear them. We are hearing them. We're rejecting really, we're more dangerous than a bear. Really? Okay. It's just ludicrous. But even underneath it, setting, the obvious, I'll say it, stupidity of that argument. They just want to be heard, that they're fearful and all that. Again, we're trying to talk about relationships here. They're actually I believe this video or this trend is going to significantly drive more men away, because we're seeing men just go, are you really serious now? Like, men who have nothing to do with any of what you and I talk about. And they're even they are making videos now mocking it. Women, the average women, right? Not a feminist, not someone like yourself who speaks out on men's and boys' issues, just the average women. They're speaking up like I've never seen before. And my fear is they've opened up a can of worms that they don't realize. And they've poked the bear, if I may say. And the bear is going, really? You want to do this? Okay, let's dance.
There's a fantastic quote by I have forgotten his name, but by an Indian author who does comics. Says, why should I apologize for being a monster? No one ever apologized for making me this way. And that's what they're doing. They are by mistreatment creates monsters. If you look in the background of most serial killers or everything, they will have had something horrible happen to them. That does not justify what they did or erase it, but it does kind of sort of explain it. If men are treated like monsters long enough, they will eventually become one, because Why would they not? If I'm going to be labeled a monster or called a monster, fine, I'll be the monster, because there's no point in being good. There's no benefit to them. They're damned either way. So yes, I've told many women that you don't understand what you're doing. You are creating the very monsters that you claim to be afraid of. You are creating your own, it's a perpetual cycle.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example of that, Lindsay, right? And I had this conversation with a politician this week. We got into talking about pews in the schools, right? It's primarily white males, 16 to 19. That's, I mean, there's outliers to be sure. But when you look at it, and by the way, from single mother homes by a wide margin.
Well, that's true. Mass shooters.
Yeah, but when you step back, and I walk the politician through this, because they're hardcore, we got to look into this and blah, blah. They have every reason except the actual one that I postulate is out there, which is these boys from literally birth have been told there's something wrong with them. You're to blame for everything. They're, in a word, othered. They're dehumanized to the point that they lose the ability to have things like empathy or rational thought. They're made into monsters. And when you get to the point where you feel you are not a human being, you've been dehumanized to that point, and it's horrific what's going on in the schools and in general, what's being done to boys and men. Why are we even remotely surprised that this is happening, right? 40 years ago, when I went to school, right, in high school, there used to be shotguns hanging in the back of people's pickup trucks and cars,
The very first threat of school shooting was, I forget the state, but it was in 1979. There is a very famous picture where the threat was called in on a landline, of course, and the teachers and the students went out to their cars, got their shotguns, and guarded the front of the school. And no one dared come near them. But yes, women are creating their own monsters. And that's another thing. They're talking about women, that men are so dangerous. I love this comment. I saved it so that I can reply to it. But they said that, all right, y'all are all afraid of men. Okay. More mothers raise their children than fathers. Raise better ones. If you're so afraid of men, raise better ones, because y'all are the ones who are raising these people that you're afraid of. And that's true. Eventually, if you beat a dog enough, it will bite you. If you poke a bear long enough, it will bite you. And I'm not entirely sure how much more certain men can take before eventually they snap. And is it going to be a tragedy? Absolutely. But I think it might as bad as this sounds, it might take a tragedy for them to see the error of their ways.
Well, one of the arguments I've often made is that it shows the strength and resiliency of not just men, but boys, right? 13, 14-year-olds. People do not understand just what we go through, how vilified we are in general. When you assume we're bad and you tell us that, when we watch TV shows and every instance, man bad, girl good, when you go to schools and you have teachers forcing boys to stand up and apologize to girls, or boys have to attend SA classes because they might commit it, but girls don't, it starts weighing. And it's a heavy, it's not just a weight on your shoulder. It's, a battleship anchor carrying around on your shoulders. And the fact that more men aren't snapping and doing horrific things is a testament to how strong men are. And I say that knowing that there are a lot of men that do snap.
That right there is why I will always choose the man over the bear, because if the men were really as dangerous as women say they are or claim they are, while being vilified every second of every day, you'd know. If men were really the monsters that at least the feminists are claiming they are right now, there would be dead bodies for days. It'd be like The Walking Dead or the freaking Purge. And the fact that it's not is proof that men are not the monsters that so many women want to claim them as. And I mean, I had to have this very awkward conversation with my 10-year-old about how there are different rules for boys and girls, and let that sink in. Because from a female standpoint, from the feminist mind point, you hear there are different rules for boys and girls. Like, oh my God, no, there should be the same rules. Girls shouldn't be able to do anything that boys can do. That's not what I mean. I mean, I had to sit my 10-year-old down and tell him that from now on, he should never be allowed to be alone in a room with any woman who isn't his mother.
Well, I mean, we've
at
talked about
school.
this. Yeah.
Don't be alone with teachers. There has to be someone else in the room. If they're going to want to talk to you for any reason and they're going to be alone in a room with you, you better call me. I'll be at that school fast, because I don't trust them, and he shouldn't either. And that's a terrible conversation to have with a 10-year-old. He's not even in 5th grade yet.
Well, it's a terrible conversation for you as a mother. I mean, you brought up schools, right? I mean, there isn't a day that has gone by in the last 6 months that I haven't seen or had someone send me yet another story about a teacher essaying a boy, a female teacher essaying a boy. Literally, there has not been a single day since prior to Thanksgiving. Okay. I get and I understand people, sometimes they're the same story. I'll get 4 or 5 of the same story in the same day, but every day is a different story. Right. And I sit there and I go, yeah, we're at the point now, because I've advocated men should wear body cams at work and all that, but we're at the point where maybe it's time we have to have a conversation with school boards to say, yeah, we're not going to allow female teachers to be alone with boys at all anymore, because you don't allow male teachers to be with girls, right? Oh, no, we can't do that. You know, doctor's offices. I have a female general physician. She has no problem, me as a patient, being in that room with me alone. When's the last time you saw a female patient and a male doctor be alone in a room without a nurse present? It don't happen, right? So, you know, I think we are at the point where we need to start having the conversation with children, with moms such as yourself, but in society, to say, yeah, with all these female teachers doing the things they are, it's time that we start raising awareness on this, and preventing boys from being alone with female teachers. Oh, that's going to be a fun discussion, and you know the rage I'll get for bringing that one up.
So, and the video that went viral, I actually had to turn my phone off while we're filming this because it kept buzzing every 6 seconds.
Good for you.
Angry bee. But someone said that women aren't making the lewd comments or gestures. They were talking about catcalling and whatnot. And I said, obviously you have never seen a group of middle-aged women drinking around a pool during the summer, catcalling, making lewd comments to the teenage boys that come to swim, because I see it every summer. The pool is right across from my house, and that's where we spend most of the time, me and the boys, because they swim, they get exercise, all of that. And the number of times my head will whip around because some middle-aged bored housewife is ogling a 15-year-old. Number in the, I can't. And to sit there and say it, I would honestly say I have seen more bad behavior from women with regards to that than I see bad behavior from men. And it's more prevalent. Now, bad behavior from men in that regard, like the catcalling and the lewd comments and whatnot, at a bar where there's alcohol, yeah, you're going to find a lot of it. But in suburbia on a Wednesday at 2,
and a lot of times without any drinking involved.
And yeah, sometimes without any drinking.
Without any drinking. So
and
they don't even have that excuse.
Or like, how old are you? Oh, come look at me when you turn 18. And it's the same comments that they claim that men make, which I haven't really ever seen. I've seen maybe 1 or 2, but I hear them all the time from women. It's gotten to the point where if I am talking to another woman and she says she heard some man say that, I'm like, did you, or did you say that and you've decided to switch the gender so it sounds better?
It feels better to them to switch the gender.
It also feels better.
It's all about the feels, right?
Because I've actually seen this play out in person. We were on the lake, and we were a group of friends, all hanging out together. And what the women said got changed in the retelling to what the men were talking about a couple months later. And I think they forgot, the girls that were talking about this forgot that I was there to listen to this. And I'm like, are you sure that's what Steve said? Because I distinctly remember you saying that. And they're like, oh, you were there. And I'm like, yeah, I was there. So a lot of it is they'll switch things around to try and, because it sounds better and everyone accepts it. Oh yeah, men talk like that all the time. Actually, no, men don't.
No,
Men don't. And the locker room conversation, men don't talk about that crap. Women do, but men don't.
Well, I mean, it was about a year ago, the whole gym talk thing was going on where women were saying, men are sitting in the locker room talking about what we look like and all that. And, having owned gyms, been in gyms for 40, whatever, 50 years, all of that. And I'm like, that's not what guys talk about in locker rooms. In fact, the majority of the time, guys don't talk at all. Okay. You might do the head nod and all that. And God forbid he's walking around with a towel on and he's going to change because we ain't looking at him most of the time. Okay. We don't have conversations. If we do have conversations, they're inevitably about what's your bench, bro, is, something like that, or sports or something like that. We don't talk about women. And I have literally seen and done it myself, where every once in a while you'll get a boy, not a man, right? And they could be a 40-year-old boy, by the way, all right, who will try and brag about his latest conquest or what he did the prior night with some girl or whatever. We tear the guy apart. Shut up. We're not going to have this discussion. We don't want to hear it. It's not like women literally think we're like high-fiving, cheering each other on. And, it's like, oh, you go, man. Great job. But no, we would vilify the guy for doing that.
They think that because that's what women do. And we have
exactly
this odd perception in our womanhood, that if we do it, that means the other side does it.
Exactly. They're assigning to men what they do.
The same thing with communication, how we communicate with each other. Like when they say, well, men don't talk to other men about their feelings. They do. They just don't do it in a way that you would. Therapy for women looks different. Fishing can be therapy. Going out on a guy's trip with your buddies on the weekend and purposely not talking about the heavier crap to get away from it all. That can be a form of therapy in a way that women wouldn't do that. They would go and purposely talk about the heavy stuff. Mm-hmm. Men will avoid talking about it, not because they don't want to deal with it, but because it's like Atlas holding up the globe. They need a break. They need to put the globe down and take a breather, and then they'll go and they'll pick it back up and they'll deal with it. But women don't understand that. And when I try and tell them that, like, look, guys don't communicate that way. It's like when we always inevitably get into the conversation about SA and rape, they'll always say, well, men make fun of other men for it. No, they don't. They don't.
Quite the opposite.
And the only ones that do, in most cases, the ones that are saying, oh, well, where was this teacher when I was a kid, are usually ones who had something happen to them and they have been gaslit by society and women into thinking that only women are allowed to say no and or not want it. Mm-hmm. So it's not even necessarily that they're saying it because they truly believe that. It's a conditioned response. Just like a battered woman will say, I shouldn't have made him angry. Men who have been conditioned will say, where was she when I was a kid? It's a conditioned response. It's a trauma response. It's not, they don't actually believe that. They might think they do until they get to be a little bit older and realize, oh, crap.
Yeah, it's a sign when that happens, because I run into it all the time, and I'm one of the ones that will call them out on it, right? Is because it's a sign of immaturity, right? This is the guy's perspective on it. Is when a guy says that, because I've had it said to me as a victim, right? Well, you enjoyed it. And I'm like, oh, it's time for education, right? Sit down, son. We're going to have a little chat, right? And it's not, we're not high-fiving or anything like that. Sometimes it's a direct communication, sit down, shut up, here's what I'm going to say. Other times it's, hey, let's go have a beer, sit and talk, and we'll get to it. We might start talking about, I don't know, the Yankees or something like that and get to it. It is a difference in the way we communicate, but men in general will never accept that. They'll never accept anything like that. But women can't see that because they don't see it. They expect us to sit face to face over, a glass of wine, and we're going to talk for 4 hours about our problems. Guys do not do that, have never done it, never will do that. We'll tear an engine apart. Well, we used to. The way they are now, we can't anymore. But my buddies and I, if we were dealing with something, let's work on the engine, or let's go shoot hoops, or whatever it might be. We may not say anything for 2 hours, but then it'll come out, but it's over with in minutes, right? Yeah, bro, I'm having a problem with this, this at work, or my girlfriend's doing this or whatever. Well, here's some thoughts. Give it a shot. We give solutions, right? This is the thing women get enraged about is, I have a problem. Okay, here's my solution for your problem. I don't want that. You're supposed to sit and listen to me. You're supposed to validate my feelings. That is not what guys do. We are solution oriented.
I've started asking Mr. Squirrely if I just need to rant because I married my best friend. He's the one that I go to for everything. But I know that he's not looking for solutions, or not. He's solution oriented, I should say. So I will go to him and say, can I rant for a minute? Which is what we have established. That means I just need him to use him as a sounding board. I'm not looking for a solution. I'm not looking for anything. I just want to talk at someone for a moment or two. And he goes, sure. And then sometimes I can see him biting his lip. I'm like, okay, what? Like, we'll get to the end of it. And he goes, you told me not to. And I'm like, yeah, but you've made that face and you look constipated. Just tell me anyway. And he'll tell me. I'm like, great. And he goes, you're not going to do it, are you? No.
No, but see, that's why your marriage is so successful, Lindsay, right? And it's why your marriage is going to last. You've come to a solution. There are times you just want to vent, and you tell him that. Geez, you directly tell him so that he understands without having to guess or read between the lines what you're looking for. What a novel concept.
I don't think I've ever actually uttered the words to him if in a non-sarcastic way.
You are relaying it to him, though.
If you know the words I've never said to him is, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. I've never said that. I've never said that non-sarcastically. Like, I've said it as, as a sarcastic, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. But it's always with that humor. I've never said it and meant it because I don't expect him to read my mind. Ironically, when he comes to me and wants to rant, he has to tell me the same thing because I will try and find solutions for him because I want him to feel better.
Well, I mean, I deal with that with my wife, and she's like, we own businesses together and all that, and we would run into issues and we'd have to address them. These had nothing to do with our relationship, but directly related to the business. And she would say, all right, well, here's how I feel. I'm like, okay, well, that's not, we gotta have a solution here, dear. We're not trying to feel our way through this. But then the other side of it is, like you just said, there were times when I said to her, all right, well, this is what I'm thinking or feeling. And she would kick it back to me going, well, that's all great, Dan, but here's the solution we need to do. And you know what? I respected the hell out of her for doing that because I still got to vent, and vice versa. That's how it's supposed to be. But yet most women resort to, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you, or you should be able to read my mind, because women love to read men's minds, except one problem. 99.9999999% of the time, they're wrong on what they're reading.
It's like the game of telephone, or it's like, okay, so they want to look into a guy's mind and I can read his mind, and they open it and it's command prompt. And they don't know the language. They don't know the syntax for it. And they're like, I'm going to make crap up. or just assume this is what it says. No, that's not what that does. And the worst thing about a lot of the female advice is they won't actually ask the right questions. In other words, someone whose marriage is failing or whatnot will ask questions from their single friends. And I'm like, why are you asking someone who can't keep a guy any longer than Taylor Swift long-term relationship advice? They're like, well, my girlfriends give good advice. No, they don't. Your girlfriends give shit advice. Yeah. Go talk to your parents.
I always laugh, like the younger ones will go to the 60-year-old divorcees who have been through 5 guys for advice. And I sit there and just shake my head. But you actually trigger something in my brain that I'll share. And I know every guy's going to go, yep. And every woman but you is going to go, what? So the one thing that my wife does that drives me nuts is, for example, we'll be laying in bed and I'll be just enjoying my coffee. Or I'll sit in the backyard for 2 hours. Or I'll be at the beach staring at the ocean for 2 hours. And what's wrong? Something's wrong.
What do you think?
I know something's bothering you. There ain't a freaking thought in my brain, right?
You're in the nothing box.
I'm just enjoying. I'm sitting looking at the waves rolling in on the ocean, right? Or I'm watching the cardinals at the bird feeder. There is not a thought in my brain, but it drives her insane. And she's a great woman. Don't get me wrong. She is a strong, independent woman, just like you. But it drives her nuts. How is it you cannot be thinking about something? That there's no way. And I just sit there and I laugh about it. Sometimes it gets me because I know something's wrong. I know. And I'm like, no, dear, there's nothing wrong. I'm just happy and relaxed.
Every now and then I will ask Mr. Squirrely that because he'll get a look on his face like he is concentrating. Normally when he's in his nothing box, his face is blank. But every now and then he'll be like frowning. And I looked at him the other day and said, what's wrong? And without skipping a beat, he goes, you're not naked.
Now that might be a thought he has. Yeah.
But he looked up at me like, and I was expecting a nothing, but I was not expecting that out of his mouth. And I'm like, touche. I will accept that answer.
Well played, sir. Well played. But the other side of it too is, when men are in that mode, and I'll use the beach as an example, right? I'm sitting at the beach. I usually have sunglasses on, and I'm just staring at the waves. But women are like, I know they're going by going, he's looking at me. I don't even notice you, but I know they're thinking that way, right? Because generally at the ocean, there's people walking the beach or, sometimes there's ones that are strutting around trying to get attention and nothing makes them madder than when I don't react. I'm literally sitting there watching the pelicans dive into the ocean, but you can see them getting upset because I'm not acknowledging them.
I see that a lot. And I don't like being stared at for anything. I didn't even like doing solos in band because everyone would look at me. It's like, don't look at me. Eric will gaze at me lovingly and romantically. And I'm like, why are you looking at me like that?
Oh, I've done that with my wife. She's like, that freaks her out. It absolutely freaks her out. What are you looking at me? Why are you doing that? Why are you
looking at me like that?
You look great, honey. That's it.
I don't do that, or I don't like that. So it baffles me how there's some women who are like, I know he's looking at me. And what I see is entitlement. They think they are entitled to a man's desire or a man's gaze. Like they think they're hot shit. And usually the ones who think they're hot shit are a -2 at best.
This is an interesting point you're making because I have the exact opposite view, but go on.
The ones who think, oh, God, all guys want me are usually the ones like they're trying to convince themselves that all guys want them because most guys don't. They're the skip-me's. The in real life skip-me's, not the online skip-me's. Different variety, but same sort of thing. In my experience as a woman talking to other women, the ones who sit there and claim that all guys want them, no one would touch them with a 10-foot pole.
Hold on. Let me bring myself up and just go testify. Because you're right. That's exactly true.
But they want everyone to think that they're like so desirable because they think they're entitled to that desire. And I'm like, no one owes you their time, attention, money, nothing. And then that same entitlement for their looks also kind of translates into other things, money, all that crap with the ridiculous standards. The bare minimum. But they want to be wanted, which is not a bad thing to want. You want to be wanted. That's great. But are you really that special if all that you have to offer that they might want is your body? Because youth fades, everything starts to drop. Depending on how big they are, they might actually start to look like testicles after a while. Mine will never do that, but
I'm not touching any of this.
So if that's all that you want to be desired for, I would rather be desired for this than what I have between my legs. It baffles me in the fact that here we are as women in feminism and whatnot, spent all this time talking about how women are more than their looks, and yet this new crop of women think that's the only thing that they have. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't we conquer this hill?
Oh, that's what ago? I've talked about. My best friend happens to be a woman and a feminist from the 70s, and it infuriates her. I wish to God I could get her to come on the show. She will not do it. She's too camera shy. But, privately, the things she says to me about today's modern women, today's feminists, the politest thing I can say is that she'll say something like they've ruined everything we spent our entire lives working for, because they are circling it back to where women are now valued by this, right? The ones that go, I am the table, as I like to say. What do you bring to the table? I am the table. Because I've seen,
like, no, honey.
And I'm looking at it going, yeah, you're a rickety old, anyway, I don't want to get in trouble here, but I just want to throw something at you that you said, which is the opposite, because you were talking about they're looking for validation on their looks, is like you feel insecure when your husband looks at you, right? Like, why is he looking at me? And he's thinking you're hot. My wife has the same thing. I think a lot of it is that insecurity that women have. Whereas the husband, me, your husband, guys in general, when they're in love with a woman, they're in love with a woman. They think she's the most beautiful woman on the planet. We don't see the stretch marks or, the C-section scar. We don't see that your boobs are hanging past your knees. We don't care. We care about you as a person. That's what women should want, right? So, but it makes you feel insecure, I feel. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Eric's behind me.
I was to say, don't tell him I got his back, man, 100%.
He actually explained it to me quite well. In so much as there's two different things, and they're both true. So, the way men are friends is whenever two guys who are friends get together and they've been friends for a long time, they immediately revert back to whatever age they were when they became friends.
I agree with that.
And the same is true of relationships. When Eric looks at me, he is, without sounding creepy, back when we first met when he was 18 and I was 15. Mm-hmm. And that's the image of me he has in his head and his heart. And whenever he looks at me, that's kind of what I morph into.
Yep.
So we'll be, and this is nothing truer than we were walking past Forever 21 and he points at a mannequin, go, you could wear that. That would look cute. I'm go, honey.
I do this. Where is he listening still? Yeah. Tell him, I'm sure he hears this because I know he can't come on camera. I do the exact same thing. So guess what, brother? I'm with you. Because that is exactly how we think and feel. And I've done every bit of that. I am just as guilty. Mm-hmm. So there. So now, ladies.
Mr. Squirrely, see, he does exist.
Oh, he's showing his face even. Wow, dude. You are a great man, by the way, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And you have a terrific wife. She's actually a sane one. But yeah, he's right. Everything he's saying to you is right. It's exactly what men think. Are there boys that think differently? And when I say boys, I don't mean 15-year-olds. I mean 55-year-olds. There are some out there.
Maturity level.
Yeah, it's maturity. But a true man, when he's in love with a woman, no amount of Giselle Bundchen could be on the bed behind me right now, and I would not care because I am happily married, and she is the most beautiful woman in the world to me, right?
So well, every now and then, because guys will sometimes they're not blind, so we'll be going somewhere and he'll see something or it flash.
Oh, you're gonna look. Oh yeah.
As soon as she's out of sight, she's gone.
Yep.
And so I have gotten yelled at by my female friends or associates, I guess you could say. I'm very selective on who I actually call friend. We'll sit there and say, well, aren't you mad at him? I'm gonna go, why? He's coming home with me. He's married, not blind. If I'm allowed to look fondly at, like, Henry Cavill on screen, who grimes up good rather than clean up nice, it's grimes up good. If I'm allowed to look lovingly at, or not lovingly, but, God, that's a pretty man, and him not say anything, he should be, it's the same thing. And he's married, not blind. He's coming home with me. I've managed to be keeping him happy for the past, 16, 18 years now. So I must be doing something right because he keeps coming back. And the same thing with clothes. It doesn't matter. He always tells me from what I'm wearing now, when I'm wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, or, shorts and a tank top, or a nice dress, he tells me, doesn't matter. It's going to look better on the floor.
Well, see, ladies, I hope ladies are listening to this and
take notes.
Actually taking notes, because it does clarify a lot. I mean, my wife does get insecure sometimes at the beach, because there was a time last year, I'm not going to deny it. This girl walked by and she was drop dead gorgeous, and she was in a thong bikini. I looked, and it wasn't a glance. All right. Trust me, every single person, male and female, looked. She was that beautiful, to her credit. But that, my wife's like, well, I know you're looking at her. Yeah, I am. So are you, by the way. But then, I don't know, a month later, give or take, this guy walks by. And this guy was a good-looking guy. I don't remember what Superman looks like. I know he's Superman, but I don't remember what he looks like. But, he make Brad Pitt look like a 2, okay? That type of thing. I noticed it. I'm not gay, but I'm going to tell you right now, I am nowhere near his league. And I saw her looking. And boy, did I bust her chops for it. I wasn't. She's like denying it. Her head was like, her drool coming out of her mouth. And I'm like, you are so hypocritical. And it's a good relationship. I said, you're so hypocritical. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And that's what happens with these things, because in the end, we're coming home together. You're coming home with your husband together. That's what makes for good relationships. The problem is we've lost that. Majority of people have lost that ability. Oh my God, he looked at another woman. I'm going to divorce his ass because, Karen, Becky, and I don't know,
Susan,
Brandy with an I, is telling her and chirping in her ear, yeah, he looked at that girl, so he's cheating on you.
Well, I think women prey, and I don't know why they do this, because good friends would not prey on your insecurities. They would, and all I can think of is it goes back to misery loves company.
Absolutely, that's what it is. Because
women who do that to other women are preying on their insecurities. See, if I have a friend who would say, I think he's seeing someone else or I gained a whole bunch of weight. I had a friend that once gained a whole bunch of weight. We are no longer friends. We've lost touch, but she gained a whole bunch of weight after her third child. And she was deathly afraid that her husband was going to leave her. And I go, no, he loves you. He would never do that. Have you seen the way he looks at you? Like, he's admiring, a painting in a gallery somewhere. He's not, don't give in. Well, everyone else was oh yeah, he's going to do this and you need to lose the weight. And I'm like, shut the up. Like, that's not being a good friend. No, it's hurting her. Guys would just get in each other's face if you tried to do that. But, if I'm that woman and my bestie, right, because that's the term you guys use, is telling me, well, you're 40 pounds overweight, you need to lose weight or you're going to,
That's not a friend. What? Are you kidding me? In my mind, as a guy, I'd be even for herself. So she's going to make this woman feel insecure and leave him. And there are women that do that. You know, they want the guy, so they got to separate him from his current wife so they can have him. Not that they're going to end up with him, but
see, so I don't, that's why I say that the sisterhood doesn't exist. The sisterhood only really exists in certain instances. And if something only exists at the discretion of the situation, then it doesn't really exist at all. See, we'll hold the sisterhood when we're all being bad behavior, like collective bad behavior. Yeah, you go slay queen. But when it comes to individual on one-on-one things or other instances, oh, well, no, we will quickly throw each other under the bus. And if an idea like the sisterhood, or they talk about the bro code, I don't think the bro code means what you think it means. It's not this secret brotherhood of like Templar knights where they all get around and they're going to protect their bro at all costs. He's doing something bad, so we're going to not get on him. I'm like, no, men would have that. They would be out on their ass faster than you could say Taylor Swift sucks.
you're going to get all the Swifties pissed off at us.
So the reason why I saw this comment, and I see comments like this a lot. Every girl I know has had a negative knows someone who's done some guy that, bugged them or whatever. But no guys I know are friends with any of them. You want to know why? Because when someone says or they find out that someone did that, they kick his ass to the curb faster than you can say unfair.
Yep.
Men surround themselves with what they have values. Women excuse other women's bad behavior.
And the classic thing is that if, the quote unquote Chads or Kyles or Tyrones, there's like 3 different names for these people. But anyway, they tend to be completely alone, right? And that's why they go from woman to woman to woman to try and validate themselves that way, right?
They're either completely alone or they only hang out with people,
other Chads,
like them, and then they're not even really friends. It's more like they're hunting in packs.
That's exactly it. You beat me to the point. We think too much alike, I know. On that note, Lindsay, guess what? We've been talking for a long time. We didn't even get to half the stuff we wanted to.
No, we didn't.
I think this has been a terrific conversation. And for those of you watching, her and I are live every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30 Eastern on, what is it all? TikTok, YouTube,
Instagram, no.
Twitter. Well, Instagram lately hasn't been working well, but Twitter's the other one. So come hear even more of our conversations. But I want to wrap things up. First of all, how can people follow you on your wonderful social medias?
All right. I am, with the exception of YouTube, but I'm working on that. I am Squirrel Girl 1988 on all of it. I am that on Instagram, TikTok, and on X. Twitter. I refuse to call.
Yeah, you just called it X.
I just don't. Freudian slip, guys. Don't at me. On Twitter and all of that, I am Squirrel Girl 1988. I am working on getting my YouTube channel set up so that if we do lose TikTok, which I know we're not going to, but just brewing.
Well, we're not going to lose TikTok, but TikTok has often lost us. We'll just
that way. In other words, not if TikTok itself goes away, but if I am no longer have access to TikTok because the Clock app is mad at me because I made feminists angry. I'm working on getting stuff put up on YouTube.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone to go follow her. And I'm not saying it because she's my partner in crime and all that, but you do some brilliant videos. And I tell people all the time, if you want to see someone who can eviscerate another human being with a smile and in the nicest voice ever, it's my girl, Lindsay, because she is the master of it. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, it was really nice to be able to talk and not have to worry about
not have to censor ourselves
or comments or anything. Just an uninterrupted, unscripted conversations was nice.
Yeah. So come check us out. Like I said, every Wednesday live. I'll put links down in the show notes to her accounts where you can watch us live. We're here all the time. Lindsay, thank you so much for doing this. Happy anniversary to us, although we're a couple months late. And
it's the thought that counts.
Yeah. And we got a lot of exciting stuff. We're working on a book together. We're going to continue to grow Boy Meets Squirrel. I'm Boy, she's Squirrel. It should have been Man Meets Squirrel or whatever. But anyway, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me again.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up on that. Hey, if you've enjoyed this, give me that thumbs up, because we all know how the algorithms work. And yeah, as much fun as we have, sometimes the social medias don't like to put our stuff out there because it can be pretty controversial. So your thumbs up, your comments. I love comments. I know Lindsay will be looking on here for any comments that you have. Please put comments down below on anything that we thought. If you can disagree with us, have a little respect. Calling me a thumb, as someone did the other day, which I'm like, really? I find it humorous. That's not going to get a response from me. Well, it did, but I genuinely, and I know Lindsay does too, we want to hear what your thoughts on the topics that we talked about: status of relationships, the man versus bear, and all that. So comment them down below, share it, and hey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Remember, new podcast show goes up every Sunday at 11 Eastern. Plus, we have our live Wednesdays at 4. On that note, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.